Hello, everybody. Before we get into the video with Destiny on Piers Morgan, I just want to show like one short video, maybe reference my Substack. If you guys don't follow me on there, I talk about stuff like this. I don't really make political content. However, political discourse, just based on my own life and witnessing it, treads very lightly into the realm of fixed false beliefs and delusionalism. So that's my area of expertise. So we'll break it down. Like I said, don't like to do political content, but it's actually pretty important. I think it will teach a lot of people how to make sure that they get the accurate information. Something I've noticed from the left, at least on YouTube, is that they like to, well, there's a lot of criticisms that they have, some of it being that you're very outraged. So something like a death, like in this instance, we focus on that, but we don't focus on facts, amongst other things that they say. They also say things like, they call people on the right delusional, and I kind of get it, but not for the reasons you think. I'm more center right leaning. So when I say this, it's coming from a place of love. But this doesn't mean I agree with Destiny. I understand the angle he's taking things. Genius in that regard, but makes you look insane. And everybody has a right to condemn him in a regard. So let's go to the first video. For those, also my Substack is just Torshaa. If you want to read stuff like this, I just did one on Trump and anosognosia, which is kind of where we're going to touch on today. This is a 3-minute video.
Never before had a U.S. president refused to admit defeat. Never before had a president alleged the election was stolen.
Trump 2020, baby.
But on January 6th, as Congress was getting ready to officially declare Joe Biden the winner, Trump called his supporters to Washington. 20 minutes later, they followed his instructions and started moving en masse, just as 2 pipe bombs were found near the Capitol. With each passing moment, the crowd outside got closer and the police were pushed back. The scaffolding set up for the upcoming inauguration scaled. Windows broken, officers set upon by an angry and violent mob. Clubbed, sprayed with chemicals, punched and kicked, the crowd overwhelmed the police. What we didn't know then was how close they came to their targets. Seconds from seeing the vice president rushed into an office for his safety. Then Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and his security detail running, realizing the mob was yards away. Senator Mitt Romney told to turn and run. We now know this was a pivotal moment. The crowd lured away by police officer Eugene Goodman. If they had turned right instead of following him, they would have found senators in the chamber behind an unlocked door. And we now know how close they came to members of the House.
They're leaving. They're leaving.
Fleeing through the last available exit, they breached the door. And a single shot rang out. It was Ashley Babbitt, killed by police as she attempted to get through the door. In all, 5 people would die, including Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick. He had a stroke after being attacked with bear spray. In the following days, 4 officers would commit suicide. In all, 140 officers were injured. Hours after it began, the building was cleared and the vote was certified.
Joseph R. Biden Jr. of the state of Delaware has received 306 votes. Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 232 votes.
Soon, he and his supporters began to deny the reality of what this was, calling it a peaceful protest, not an attempted insurrection. The courts have not agreed. So far, more than 700 people have been arrested. The longest sentence, more than 5 years in prison. The person who planted the pipe bombs has still not been identified. A congressional committee is investigating how this happened. Was it planned? Who was involved? And should criminal charges be filed? But those questions will take time to answer. And if Republicans win control of the House in 2022, they have promised to shut down the investigation.
They got 10 people trying to stop us.
A year on, this day cost lives. For others, their freedom. But getting to the truth will largely be determined by whether or not it costs Trump his political power.
And that falls under indecent exposure. Something worse, but that guy, yeah, I did see it. I haven't talked about it though. I don't think I can really talk about it on camera if you're being serious. He was identified and I think he was charged. But okay, so that's just one thing. I'm a fan of Trump, but Trump does some crazy ass shit. And I have said that, like in my personal life, that I think it would be related to the fact that he doesn't have training in politics. It's kind of where I wrote it off on. So, what happens when somebody with a lot of authority claims something like the election is stolen? Like, what could go wrong? Well, it's a fixed false belief, first of all. And so the thing about fixed false beliefs in terms of people who are mentally ill, we can all fall victim to like this line of thinking when you have the right things lined up. So just because I say it's a more mentally ill thing, it doesn't mean that we don't all lose. It doesn't mean that we all can't fall victim to it over time, which is why it's like one of those things I have a difficult time explaining. I know it 'cause I've seen it, but I really don't have the words for it because you have one person who's mentally ill that believes in God, and then you have somebody who is not mentally ill that believes in God. But one of those two people can lead to violence. And you're like, what? It's a whole thing. Read my Hitler piece. But beside that, when you have somebody who is in a position of authority claiming the election was stolen, people hold politics very closely. And aside from that, if somebody who's in charge, Trump, is saying that, that fuels political violence. It does. Because I've talked about it many times. There's people that are on the far end of the spectrum who can't differentiate with reality. These are your people that write the manifestos, that shoot Trump, attempt to. It's a small minority, but it's big in regards to violence because you only need one, right? You only need one person. So when you have people that find, well, fixed false beliefs are delusions that despite evidence, despite like here's evidence that that's not true, they unequivocally, what's the word? They vehemently believe this to be true. It's a very unfortunate phenomenon that happens. And like I was saying, anybody can fall victim to it. So my point to that is that when you have Trump saying that and you have people that want to that in some regard believe Trump, they want to commit violence in order for things to be fair. Trump did a few things that he fucked up by the speech beforehand saying we're going to go storm the Capitol. What could fucking go wrong? Do you guys remember the Astro World thing with Kylie Jenner's baby daddy and how people ran the fence and this thing like concert audience crush? Do you guys remember this? Audience crush, whatever it's called, happens. It's like when people get so packed in one small area that essentially you can fall and collapse because you can't breathe because you're like shoulder to shoulder. You end up getting lifted off the ground. It's very dangerous. Like when you put people in smaller areas, there's deaths that will occur. You should know that. So saying that we're going to go storm the Capitol, either you're just stupid or you think of people as peaceful protesters. It's a faulty thing that unless you've dealt with this shit like firsthand, that maybe, you know, maybe you don't know. I would assume in some regard that if you are level-headed, maybe have taken some sort of class that trains you to be president, whatever the fuck that is, you learn this. Like the most that small portion of people are the ones that commit the violence, and all you need is to say one thing to get people charged. So that's like one thing. There was something else that he did. Um, what else did Trump do? Saying the election is stolen. I should write about this and break it all down. I suck at talking. But what else? So saying that the election is stolen and you're dealing with people's livelihood, it scares people. And so forever they will see the other person as the enemy. Like Biden sucks, okay? But he doesn't suck for the reasons most people say he does, aside from the fact that he has dementia. Okay, that's a whole other sort of thing. But like you have to operate in gray. And different news stations are going to prey on your fear circuits in order to persuade you of one thing. I can say as somebody who's more right-leaning that there was a period of time where even I was like, "Oh, the Capitol wasn't that bad," but I didn't really, like, look into it until a few weeks later, like, "Oh, shit." I think it wasn't a few weeks later, it was during when certain creators actually in this sphere were being prosecuted for it, and then I was like, "Oh, shit, this is what happened." So I know firsthand where I'm saying, like, if you just focus on these media outlets to get your informed opinion, it's gonna be flawed. It just is. And it's like, well, I don't wanna listen to the other side. See it as more of a debate thing. You don't wanna look like the dumbass, okay? Aside from that, let's talk about the whole Trump shooting f thing. Okay, so because of all of that shit that happened January 6th, because, people on the right will claim that the election was stolen. I don't see it that much anymore, but there was a period of time. So then you can provoke violence from the other side because let's say that person, Trump, who a lot of people I think would agree that at least as of like July 13th, he was probably going to actually now more people I'm sure think he will win. I'm not saying whether he will or not, but because of that, that takes that violence from that side and it gets transferred to this side because this side is like, "Hey, you can't even admit that XYZ was that it was delusional, that, January 6th should have never happened." So then they go insane on this side and they commit an act of violence. And you're like, well, it's a different thing. People die. It's the same. I'm telling you, like watching the brain and how delicate it is, it it could so easily happen to anybody, which is crazy. And I know that's not a popular opinion. I'm just telling you the facts, okay? I say facts because so many people wanna say they know why somebody did a behavior, and it's such a slippery slope, okay? You don't know. It's okay. But I think a lot of people have a hard time operating in a gray area because we kinda want one answer, so when we think about other opinions, when people ask us opinions, you have sort of a classified, "Oh, that's this, that's that." People get very uncomfortable when you have multiple reasons for something. Could you imagine having just every single opinion of yours or every single thought to have 5 possible things? It's a lot of people like can't handle it. I know I wouldn't be able to, and I like to think of myself as relatively level-headed, but I'm sure if you asked me certain shit, I'd be like, "Oh, this." It's like, "But what about this of it?" Okay, you're kind of right. A little bit. Some of y'all be delusional, but that's the topic actually that we're going to keep going on. So anyways, you get the other side that's like, "Hey, you can't even admit that so and so election was stolen, that that was false. You can't admit that January 6th promoted violence. You can't admit that oh shit, the shit he was tried for, the two things. That's two more things to put under the first two. So you got four things. Now you get somebody who's delusional on the other side and they're like, if this guy gets in office, he's going to ruin the whole world, blah, 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 whatever it is. I'm going to go shoot him. And then people are outraged because obviously people died. But the way that they appeal to the emotional factor is that they will get the people that had to see it firsthand. You'll see the interviews or whatever, and it's like, how can anybody think that this is okay? If you are normal, you notice that, that's a horrible thing. There's absolutely no circumstance, arguably even in self-defense, where taking a life is justified, my personal opinion, okay? Easy, easy. So, when you have the right and the left arguing like, "Hey, you need to condemn this," they're saying, "Well, you can't even condemn those 4 things, so I kinda get it." Which is it's an edgy take, but as somebody who can see both sides of it, I kind of get it. And so I think when you like, it's definitely one way to do it. Okay, Destiny. It's definitely one way. But there's other ways to explain all the shit way better than I did and being like, "Hey, don't you think that this is kind of justified in that regard?" It's like a very small portion, but at the end of the day, taking life isn't. Okay, so I hope I summarized that relatively decently. Let's go ahead and go to the Piers Morgan and Destiny thing. Um, yeah, okay.
UFC.
Go ahead. Tell me your lunatic conspiracy theory about how odd.
I don't have any.
If you say to me,
I've been
Peter,
told
let me
by
ask you-
listen. I've been told by many experts in the last 36 hours.
There's an entire cultural machine that has lied. There is an entire
we just saw it in real time. That's it.
What?
That's
So
why
what?
conservatives deserve absolutely zero sympathy.
You sound almost gleeful, Destin. I'm sorry. That makes you, frankly, despicable.
I'm not going to get on my knees and beg for forgiveness or show sympathy to conservatives.
I'm not asking for that. I'm asking you to condemn what happened as an
Yes,
egregious
this
attack
too.
on democracy. Can you
This
do
too.
that?
No, I won't. No, I won't. I won't.
You can't do that. You see, so why the hell,
Absolutely
frankly,
not.
Destiny,
Absolutely not.
why the
Absolutely
hell
not.
should we listen to
Absolutely
a
not.
word you have to say? Former President Trump is the king of the political comeback, but even by his own lofty standards, the past 4 days have been utterly sensational. After coming within a hair's breadth of assassination, last night he made a stunning return to the spotlight of the RNC. And for once, the gravity of the occasion was not lost on him.
J. Trump.
We are grateful for you to be our nominee for the 47th President of the United States of America.
Well, Trump hasn't made an entrance quite like that since he descended the golden escalator in 2015 to announce his first run for president. Bandaged and emotional, he walked into the arena like a UFC star and got the reception to match. Well, the many people who've criticized security failings at his rally on Saturday were quick to point out that his detail this time round seemed to be made up entirely of strapping men. But the focus of the night was undoubtedly Trump himself, a man who now looks like he's seriously preparing for a return to running the country. President Biden, meanwhile, fumbled questions about his own incendiary rhetoric in the lead up to Saturday's shooting.
You called your opponent an existential threat. On a call a week ago, you said it's time to put Trump in the bullseye. There's some dispute about the context, but I think
He
you
doesn't
appreciate
know.
I
that
didn't say
words matter.
crosshairs. I was talking about focus on. Look, the truth of the matter was, what I guess I was talking about at the time was there's very little focus on Trump's agenda.
Yeah, the term is bullseye.
It was a mistake to use the word. I didn't say crosshairs. I meant bullseye. I meant focus on him. Focus on what he's doing.
What a pathetic excuse from, frankly, an increasingly pathetic president. Let's be crystal clear. Nobody thought Biden was talking about archery when he used the word bullseye, and he knows it. The presidential move.
Bold, Piers, because people did think that. People do think that. Okay, thank God he's saying that it's not true. Okay, someone's doing it, but like people do think that way.
It would have been to say that everyone on all sides needs to dial down their incendiary rhetoric. But this president hasn't looked presidential for a long time now. One positive move Biden's made in the fallout from the tragedy on Saturday is to finally order the Secret Service to protect RF Kennedy Jr. The last thing America needs right now is yet more political violence, especially involving a Kennedy. Well, in a moment, we'll meet tonight's panel to debate all this, but joining me now is a former counter-sniper in the State Department and the current Florida Republican Congressman, Corey Mills.
Kind of
Corey Mills, thank you very much indeed for joining Uncensored. First of all, I can't think of anyone better equipped in the political world than you to comment on what appears to have been a massive failing by the Secret Service on Saturday in their duty to protect President Trump. What did you make of it?
Well, I just wanted to say I really loved your monologue just now that talked about the idea of dialing down political rhetoric on both sides, as well as the dangers of utilizing words like in the bullseye or, you know, regardless of what he says he went to indicate. It's obviously what he indicated was that he wants to put him in the crosshairs. But, you know, I just want to go ahead and say that, you know, this, in my opinion, is such a massive failure. It's such a big negligence on behalf of the advanced teams to say that a target, which is 160 yards away, perfectly adjacent to the stage, was outside the perimeter. The perimeter is formed and it's discerned by the counter sniper teams, by the advanced teams, and by the security details. I can tell you, as someone who has conducted thousands of advances, both on the Afghan and Iraq side, as well as for back home, has done multiple counter sniper team deployments, looking at overwatch positions, looking at how we react and mitigate threats, that this in its entirety, and I'm not a conspiracist, Pierce. I'm not one who tries to find my way to a, you know, inside job type of setup, but I am also a military guy who believes in the what if scenarios of all things. And I think,
With all due respect, you're hot, whatever. As soon as somebody says I'm not a conspiracist, it's like, okay, that tells me this is a little bit outside of the thinking. It's not really based on fact, but things are lining up. Just something to keep in mind.
the American people deserve a true investigation, not by the FBI, but by Congress, to look and identify every single area, from local force consolidation, from looking at the cooperations that were on the ground, from resource allocations by the director of the Secret Service. And I think that people deserve to feel confident that this was.
So right now, I totally forgot this is a thing. There's people right now that think that the Trump shooting was staged. Okay, if this is you, I encourage you to just, if something seems like that, could it happen? It could, but probably not. Okay, whenever there's something like they would have shot him and killed him, is my point. Okay, I'm laughing because I'm uncomfortable. It's like it could have been a setup, but we're missing the point. Okay, this was like, I don't know. Whatever. I guess this is something we're still talking about.
But massive malice or negligence as opposed to something that was intentional.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, there's some extraordinary details emerging. The local news network in Pittsburgh has reported a member of Beaver County, Pennsylvania's emergency services unit, noticed the suspicious man on the roof near the rally at 5:45 p.m., called it in and took a picture of the person, the shooter, 26 minutes before he was able to fire off 8 shots.
Like, most people are dumb. I know you might not be, Like, I know that. But most people are NPCs. They just are. Say there's a man on the roof, they're trying to get off. They're not really doing their job. Okay? I guess in these situations, just wait for more information to come out. But it's probably more likely that it was hot as fuck and they didn't hear shit. Like, it obviously was like, you're an idiot. Like, the way you set this up, you should have anticipated the violence. Strategy wise, fucking idiots, okay? But going as far as to say that it was a setup, I don't know about that.
There's then the footage, as we've seen, of other members of the public seeing him crawling across the rooftop.
That's right.
There's also snipers who are in position who appear to be looking at this guy too, and yet he's still able to fire 8 bullets, which seems completely extraordinary to me.
Very
especially if it's all
suspicious,
happening
Piers?
150 meters from President Trump, who has been president and may well be again.
Well, it seems very suspicious.
People who are paranoid as fuck, they could be crazy in the head. I'm speaking from experience. They could be crazy as fuck, insane. But the paranoia, anything like persecutory delusions, they actually kind of execute shit like this pretty well. It's sad, it's shitty, but it happens.
You know, in police work, they call these clues.
It's like not
the
that
thing that really was sounding off to me, though, is the fact that, you know, at a minimum, let's just go ahead and give every single possibilities of just negligence as opposed to something else. You know, you could have put and said there's not enough resources. All right, fine. Let's put a patrol car in the parking lot of AGR, which was the company, with the doors locked and the lights on. There's a deterrence. Let's look at the fact that an emergency comms channel should have been set in place for the Secret Service and the local police force in cooperation and coordination, so that when that officer who came to the rooftop and says that he had the rifle pointed at him could have immediately descended and keeping himself safe.
True.
And also said, shoot her on the roof, shoot her on the roof, shoot her on the roof, which would allow the detail to have then immediately gotten on the stage to protect the president. There's so much about this, Piers, not to mention there was a water tower that was only a couple hundred yards away, which is a sniper's paradise that people aren't even talking about. This shot, Piers, is so simple. And I just want to paint a picture for your viewers, which is that if you were to take not even a sniper.
Could you guys imagine if that guy went crazy? Just like for a moment. Can you see how he's pointing out all these things? He's good at his job. He finds the loopholes where people can exploit it. I get it. But imagine if this guy went nuts. Following?
Rifle, but your basic production rifle that comes off an assembly line that you could buy in a average store, and you were to take a person with very little experience, in 10 minutes, I could train them to be able to utilize this rifle to hit targets at a pie-sized plate at 200 yards without a problem.
Well, actually, I mean, just on that point, when I was at CNN, I spent a day down in Texas at a gun store and a gun range. And I did end up firing an AR-15, which is believed to be the semi-automatic rifle the shooter used.
That's right.
And is the preferred weapon of choice for most mass shooters these days. And I was absolutely staggered about how light and easy it was to use and how very quickly, how accurate I was able to fire it, never having fired guns in my entire life. So I can completely endorse what you just said. It is a very easy to use weapon. And he was so close.
And it's also one.
And
it's one that within, if you think about it, we call it minutes of angle on each rifle, which means that's essentially, it looks at your bullet trajectory, your bullet compensation, all these different things. But what you would say is that at 100 yards, you have a 1-inch grouping capability, at 200 a 2-inch, et cetera, which means that at 160 yards, that rifle, let's just say it's not even a good rifle, it's only a 2 MOA rifle, is only shooting a 3.2-inch grouping. The average head is 6x8. The average shoulder is 20 inches long. The average head to waist is 40 inches. So when you think about, this is a game of milliseconds and millimeters that saved the president's life from being an attempted to an actual assassination. This is really something that, I hate to say it, I have to just be like this, but it's got to be divine intervention to the thoughts that this didn't eliminate and take out the life of Donald Trump, and the fact that it should have been prevented from the beginning.
Corey, the other thing that struck me as extraordinary in terms of the way the Secret Service responded to the shooting was that after the president was hit,
divine intervention. Maybe. Or maybe it's possible that a 20-year-old who never shot a gun before in their life bought an AR-15 because they only had 2 options of guns they were allowed to purchase, gets that one and lines it up and misses him because he doesn't know how to shoot guns. He was like so close. Was he though? If they're saying that this point, whatever.
They dragged him to the
Let's
floor,
get to
but
the
they
good
then allowed
shit.
him to stand back up. And one of the female agents in front of him was clearly a lot shorter than Donald Trump. And therefore, his whole sort of upper torso, including his head, was clearly visible to potentially other shooters who may have been in the area, which nobody knew at the time. That does not strike me as normal Secret Service protocol.
Well, you know, they did a good job of putting the body barrier on him. But I will note, though, prior to actually having the president stand up, you hear one of the Secret Service officers ask, is shooters down, shooters down? So they at least were looking at the existing and the obvious threat as being mitigated. And so that is kind of within protocol. I do understand your concern as well, which is mine, which is that there wasn't enough to actually body shield if you look at the height and the size of President Trump with someone else. This is why, and I don't mean this to be, you know, kind of hyperbolic or that it's trying to be a rhetoric to try and spin things up. But this is why when we look at the ideas of the DEI, the diversity, equity, inclusion, it does put things at risk when you say we need a percentage of X, right? Because DEI can mean DIE. We have to think about the fact that it should be about meritocracy, and especially when you're talking about the protection of the president or other lives.
Well, it was very striking to me that last night when Trump appeared at the RNC convention to wild applause, it was an amazing scene. He looked quite emotional, actually, but he was surrounded by a far bigger number of Secret Service agents, all of whom appeared to be very big, tall men.
Well, I think that you see where the entire RNC and especially here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, has really ramped up their security protocols, and for obvious reasons. Sometimes it is a bit of a knee jerk where they overcompensate for a failure in the past. And I think
There we go. Like, can we get to the point? Love you. If you want to watch that, you can watch that later. He saw it, so okay.
For over the last year, where are we now with this? Is it right to assume that 2 things have happened as a result of this attempted assassination? One is that Donald Trump has got exponentially more popular because people feel a real empathy with him for what happened. And secondly, that Joe Biden is more likely than not now to remain the Democrat nominee.
Yeah. So there's no reason to unilaterally surrender to Donald Trump now, but that's what it looks like the Democrats are doing. So I hope that they pick up the campaign to oust Biden again, because he's clearly not going to win. All the interviews are disasters. I don't want to surrender to Trump, but apparently Democratic officials are considering it, which would be just keeping Biden in the race. That is a form of surrender because they don't want to waste any of their so-called talent because they're so despondent about the race. I think that's pathetic. They should fight. And if they have a new ticket, they still have a perfectly good chance of beating Donald Trump. Now, I do want to say, though, there's a second topic here. Your interview with Corey Mills, Representative Mills there, I think it was dangerous and wrong. So you guys said, oh, well, you know, this shouldn't be a partisan thing and we should turn down the rhetoric. And then you implied that maybe the Secret Service or the Biden administration allowed the shooting to happen.
Well, no,
that's
nobody.
Nuts.
No,
That's not
hang on.
turning.
Nobody.
No,
nobody
you
implied
definitely
that.
did.
And
You
nobody
definitely did, Piers.
Well, I certainly did.
You kept talking about, well, look, I'm not saying conspiracy theory, but hey, it's so easy to find. And why didn't they find it? You didn't just say negligence.
Hang on, I didn't.
And forget about you, Corey Mills.
Right, okay.
He didn't say,
Just to
oh,
be
hey,
clear,
look, hey.
Okay.
He said maybe it's
Let
not
me
just
respond.
malpractice. Maybe it's not just negligence.
I didn't.
What does
I
that
didn't
mean?
say that.
Is a lunatic suggesting?
Am I allowed to respond?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. First of all, I didn't say anything that you've just said. Secondly, he did raise the specter that there's something very odd about all this. And by the way, there is. I'm not a conspiracy theorist either. But the idea that the President Trump, who was recently the President of the United States and is very likely to be again, was shot from 150 meters by a kid with an AR-15 who was seen by spectators nearly a minute before he unloaded 8 bullets in the direction of Donald Trump is very, very strange. And if you don't think it is, then I think you're being a little bit disingenuous. Now, what is the nature? So what is the nature of that strangeness?
Yeah, Piers. And that's okay to like question stuff. It's okay. It's not that it's wrong, but when you are in positions of power, like media and YouTube, you have to acknowledge it. Like I was saying, you have the really far ends of the spectrum. People rely on you to give accurate information. And a lot of people don't do it anymore because they want to appeal to their audience.
We don't know what's happened here, right? But no one can yet give a legitimate explanation as to why this could possibly have happened.
I can't help but think like, never mind.
Piers, if you say it's negligence, I'm with you.
Triggered.
If you say it's malpractice, okay, I get it. 160 feet, why is he on the roof, etc. But you're clearly implying that it is odd, as in not negligence, but something that was planned by the government.
No, I'm not.
You
I don't
have
know.
to say that.
Hey, get out of here, man. What the hell? Jesus Christ with these lunatic Republicans. Total lunatic Republicans. Yeah, go ahead. Tell me your lunatic conspiracy theory about how odd
I don't have any lunatic conspiracy theories. Do you not think it's odd, Cenk Uygur, that this kid could
crazy
stroll
that
across a roof unmanned and just fire off 8 bullets at President Trump from 150 meters? Do you not find that odd?
You've obviously never met anybody who is violent and not okay in the head, and it shows. I'm just saying. Like I was saying before, it just perfect timing for sometimes shit happens. It's not right, but if you really want, like, we could go down the number of things that were wrong with that. At the end of the day, it doesn't change the outcome. So when you talk about things that are that fuel that uncertainty, like it's an inside job, you're fueling one of those sides, the extreme side. Even if you yourself is like normal thinking, it's not the best improv, I guess.
So I find it deeply troubling. I think that there should be an investigation to see how they screwed this up. I think the fact that they didn't get there on the roof quicker it speaks poorly of them. On the other hand, can we acknowledge that the Secret Service surrounded the president and would have taken a bullet for him and would have died for him? But all they're getting now is odd conspiracy theories about how maybe.
Actually,
aren't you implying? Hold on, Piers, you tell me. Aren't you implying that they let it happen?
No.
Aren't you implying that?
No.
Obviously, what does odd mean? What does odd mean?
No,
Go ahead,
tell you what
odd means.
I'll tell you what odd means. Odd means that the Secret Service's primary function is to preserve the life of whoever is president of the United States, right? And they allowed this roof to be unmanned.
Allow. You use the word allow.
Okay, somebody made a decision not to have that roof patrolled, even though, as
you
we've
don't
heard,
even know that.
Hang on. Well, somebody did because it wasn't patrolled.
No, that's also not true.
Okay, wait. Like I could scold Piers, but like obviously that's true. Because the man made it to the top. Okay, Jesus, they're both triggered. I love it here.
Piers, we don't know the last time they looked at that roof. We don't know if they looked at it and then the guy crawled on.
Here's what we do know.
Now you mentioned.
Hold
Hold
on.
on.
There was nobody on the roof from the Secret Service. Why?
So you're telling me that you know that under Biden, Trump, and all the other presidents, that every roof had a Secret Service person on it in every rally? You don't know that. You don't know that.
Can you ever remember a president or presidential candidate who was a president giving a speech at a public rally where a roof 150 meters from his head is unprotected by Secret Service? Can you name once ever that that's happened?
How the hell would you? Piers, how the hell would you know that? You don't
Although
know.
I get his thought process that certainly should be implemented, but like he was about to say, like, you don't know that wasn't a thing. But shit, you can have a moving target. I could give you an instance of that in a parade. It's like, I get it. Obviously, they didn't have enough people. Can we move on?
Anything.
I am told
so
by.
if you say to me,
I've been told,
hold on. If you say to me,
I've been told by.
listen.
I've been told by many experts in the last 36 hours.
Like that lunatic Republican you just had on, who's an expert.
Actually, no.
Talking about, oh my God, oh yeah, I'm not sure.
Well, he was
I don't
also
think it's just
okay.
negligence. Then what does that mean?
Okay.
Then you think it was allowed?
Actually, the congressman.
Who planned it? Who planned it?
Actually, the congressman that I spoke to was on the sniper protection detail for Joe Biden.
Okay, guys, I feel like I need to come in. This is a perfect example of people getting their, it's like one of my favorite pastimes is finding things that were wrong with a situation. It's like this guy was an expert. It was a fuck up. It's just that.
When he was vice president. He probably knows more about it than you do, with great respect. Unless
Okay.
you're about to tell me you are a covert sniper protector, are you?
No, I'm telling you that we don't know anything about when they checked the building. We do know that there was the red-haired guy who talked to the BBC. He told the cops, then the cops showed up. It's not like they didn't show up. And so if you say, hey, we should investigate and find out when was the last time they did the perimeter check? When did they get on that roof? I totally agree. If you say negligence, I totally agree. If you say Trump was brave in that moment, I totally agree. But if you start implying, which you definitely are, and Corey Mills definitely is, that it was planned or that it was so odd that it happened. You're saying it like the Epstein thing was odd. The Epstein thing was actually odd. So the video camera's out. That makes me think, yes, there was something planned. I'm brave enough to say that. Instead, you're implying it. Corey Mills is implying it. So just say it then.
No.
Don't tell, what does odd mean?
Okay, again, I will say to you, I am not saying anything was planned. I'm not saying there was any inside job at the Secret Service to allow this to I am simply saying...
You're implying that. You get that, right?
Here's what I'm implying.
You're implying that?
Here's what I'm implying. Here's what I'm implying. There was such a catastrophically negligent failure here by the Secret Service. I completely understand why so many people are utterly bemused that this could ever have been allowed to happen. The idea you have a perfect vantage point over Donald Trump from 150 meters at a public rally, given how divisive and polarizing he is, given how vehemently some people hate him, and given the threats of violence he's had on many, many occasions, the idea that that roof remained unmanned by Secret Service is to me very bloody odd, Cenk. Yes.
So you're implying that there is a chance that it was planned?
No, I'm not. I'm implying that
that's literally what you just said.
Literally what I'm doing is implying that there's something we don't know about what's happened here, and we need some answers.
Then what would it be?
We need some answers I have no idea. I don't know. Now let me go to some of the other panelists, because we've expended a lot of energy on this. I think, Jake, you have to go, so I appreciate you. I appreciate you calling me a conspiracy theorist. Thank you for joining me. Let me get to Dave Rubin.
Anytime.
All right, thank you. Let me get to Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin, this is the problem. If you can't raise questions, serious questions about what's happened here, or suggest that it's odd, without being branded a conspiracy theorist by people like Cenk Uygur, there's a bit of a problem, isn't there? I mean, it seemed to me, not just negligence. There's something very strange about this whole incident and how it unfurled. I have never seen members of the public nearly a minute before a shooting at a president raising the alarm and telling people the guy's on the roof. Have you?
Yeah. Well, Piers, I haven't been on camera with that guy in about 8 years, but I'm just reminded of the brain-piercing, serious headache you get listening to him. You just laid out very calm and cogent questions as to what happened to the man who is the ex-president and could be future president of the United States. There was either a catastrophic failure, which we're all acknowledging, or something more nefarious. All we can do is ask questions. The red-headed guy with the visor who was interviewed on the BBC saying that it was probably about 2 minutes, and we'll find out the exact details on that, about 2 minutes before, where he was warning law enforcement that there was someone on the roof. Well, in 2 minutes, Piers, right now, I have an IFB in my ear. I have a microphone right here. That's what all of the agents around there have. And they're all connected to a network of people who are telling them where to look and what to do. I'm not of course, and I'm not an expert in this, but we all know this. Corey Mills happens to be an expert, and your interview was quite good with him. So the idea that 2 minutes went by and nobody looked at the roof, and by the way, the Secret Service director is now saying the reason they didn't have anyone staged on that roof was because there was a slope on the roof.
It's nonsense.
And they didn't want one of their agents to get hurt. I mean, I've got roofers out on my roof right now. There's a little bit of a slope. They have special shoes. They make it work.
Yeah, people fall off a roof and they become paralyzed, King. Like, I mean, it sounds decent.
The whole thing is insane, but I would say at the political level, this has re-energized not just the Trump base, which was energized, but this new wide swath of disaffected liberals and UFC fighters and NFL players and just good, decent Americans to realize that Donald Trump is not the enemy right now. And this fake call for unity. Yes, I would like unity in a land of unicorns and everything else, but you can't on one day spend 4 years basically calling the guy Hitler and his supporters Nazi. Then he gets shots, and now we should have unity is just nonsense. I'm sorry.
And also for the current president of the United States to be asked, do you
What's this guy's name?
have any soul searching about the language you've used, given that days before this shooting, he told donors that it was time to put Trump in the bullseye. And then he tries to dance his way out of this by claiming, I didn't say crosshairs, as if somehow when you talk about human beings, bullseye or crosshairs mean any difference. Obviously, he didn't mean, I think Donald Trump should be shot. But obviously, if you're a deranged young lunatic with an impressionable mind, who the hell knows what that kind of language? We don't know yet, right, about any of the motivation. Apparently, there's a kind of very, very strange, again, a very strange lack of information that they've been able to find out about this young shooter.
Of course, but you also have to understand that there has been an entire media machine, mainstream media machine and Democrat elite that for years, since before Donald Trump was president, have been calling him Hitler and his supporters Nazis. What would someone do if they truly believe that? I'm not directly linking this to Biden's bullseye comment, as irresponsible as it may be, or anyone else's specific comment. But over time in culture, if things get normalized, and yes, this man is going to put us in camps, and you can turn on MSNBC on any given day, and they're talking about how they're all going to be arrested and taken off the air, and what he's going to do to minorities and gays and everything else, all utter, complete nonsense. At some point, people might get a subtle message and then do something crazy. Again, we don't know if that was what happened right now, but we certainly can ask about it.
And I think to be completely fair, I believe Donald Trump has spouted a lot of very ill-advised and occasionally very dangerous rhetoric. And I want both sides to dial it down, because actually where this leads to is where it's led to. And in Britain, we've had 2 members of parliament in the last 10 years murdered by people for political reasons, basically because, lunatics have wanted to eliminate them. Let me bring in Destiny, because you've been at the center, as you know, of a massive online response to what you were saying. And I want to go through what you said, and I want to talk to you about this hopefully in a calm manner to try and understand what you were thinking. So on Saturday evening, hours after the shooting, you said, let me clarify, when I say conflicted, what I mean is I lean towards seeing it as a natural extension of the thing Trump and the MAGA kids support. So I don't think I have much sympathy about the attempt enough to chastise people celebrating it. You couldn't find it in your heart to chastise people for celebrating the near assassination of a man who was president of the United States and maybe again?
Absolutely not. Conservatives have completely bled that well dry. And the idea that they, after engaging in the most divisive and most extreme rhetoric this country has seen in recent history, that they would come on and beg for sympathy, that it's escalated into some kind of violent confrontation, is absolutely insane. Even the idea right now of saying, well, if you call somebody a Nazi for so long, it's, what do you expect people to do? I grew up listening to Rush Limbaugh call Obama a communist every single day he was on the radio. You've got conservatives that talk about how the mRNA vaccines were ways to sneak microchips into us. You've got COVID lockdowns that were done because the government was trying to take all your freedom away. They won't acknowledge anything that happened on January 6th. They say that the election was stolen and that your country is being taken from you. I don't think anybody should be killed. I don't think anybody should go out and kill anybody. But when you engage in this type of rhetoric and when you turn the temperature up over and over and over and over again, there is absolutely no room for you to be shocked or surprised. And there certainly isn't room for you to ask for sympathy.
But you say you don't want anybody killed. And yet you say, I don't think I have much sympathy about the attempt to chastise people celebrating it. People celebrating the near assassination of Donald Trump. If you can't find it in you to chastise people who do that, aren't you just as despicable as the people you've just spent the last 2 minutes haranguing?
Yes.
No, because they've led the way. This is the environment that they've created.
So you think behaving like the people you think are despicable?
Notice how, did you notice, we kind of covered the whole what happens with the wrong rhetoric on either side. If Destiny wanted to, the issue is that if Destiny concedes on it, nobody will continue to have this conversation. In my opinion, that's what I'm assuming is going on, because it's almost like they want you to just apologize to all of the people that IG, Twitter, whatever the fuck, upset, but they're not looking at the broader context of things. Like I said, I don't think anybody should lose their life ever, but I kind of get it. And I kind of see it's almost like as long as he doesn't concede, that conversation about rhetoric that's been going on both sides, on the right particularly, it will continue to be had. And when you continue to have it, people that maybe were radicalized on one end can kind of like see the light. The more that you have conversations on this, because like, let's be honest, the media outlets aren't doing it. They're not. They focus on your 2-second answer to whatever happened and how it pertains to them. You know, how isn't it just horrific? It's like, obviously it's horrific. Obviously. But until you acknowledge all of those things, people are still going to walk around as if he didn't do anything wrong. Like I said, I like him, but he said some crazy shit. He has. He just should admit it. But like I said, if you get stuck watching just curated content for, let's say, the right or the left, you're going to get a messaging that kind of deals in conspiracy a little bit in some regard.
Is the correct course of action.
Not about behaving like the people who are despicable would be leading that type of rhetoric. It would be denying every single bad thing. How many times as a liberal, how many times as a liberal have you been on a show, not you in general, but like a liberal been on a show and you've been forced to disavow all of the BLM riots, disavow all of the violence and blah, blah, blah. And then you talk to conservatives about it. January 6th,
violence,
that was
that's
a false
good.
flag.
Yeah.
January 6th. Oh, like conservatives disavow January 6th?
Wait. First off, there's an entire cultural machine that has lied. There is an entire
we just saw it in real time. That's it.
What?
That's why conservatives deserve absolutely zero sympathy for anything that happens as a result of their rhetoric. That's it. It's so easy. Like, it's so simple.
Okay, but I'm not exactly sure what he's talking about, but I would say this is the type of person that the internet has broke their brain, thus leaving them with very little empathy for their co-human. I mean, a good, decent father is now dead because of this. He's had his brains blown out because he was defending his wife and daughter. I would hope.
Maybe if I break it down this way, it's like most people are not going to harm somebody in regards to death. It's most people are not going to, but there's that small proportion that if they will on either side. So when we're focusing on like, oh, you should never just kill somebody, obviously. Let's get to like the root of the problem though, which is the rhetoric that falls way too far on either side that promotes the violence there. Because the violence is going to come from the rhetoric. It's not going to come from like these 2-second conversations of, oh, he should have never shot him. It's like, obviously, you're talking to like the regular people that can understand that. They're not seeing it on the extreme ends though.
A little empathy for that.
Let me jump in there because we have a clip of what Destiny has said about that very thing. Let's listen to this.
Fuck it. Fuck the dude, the firefighter guy. Fuck Trump. Fuck the people that support him. I just want you to know, okay? Just in case you're confused or it seems you don't, whatever. If one of you were in the crowd and you're a conservative fan of mine and you end up, getting blown away or whatever the fuck, I'm making fun of you the next day on Twitter. I am 100%.
I mean, I've got to say,
okay, obviously he's pulling something out of context. We don't know the full thing, but that's true. Me saying whether it's insane or not is not the issue. Obviously it is, okay? But think harder than that, people.
Just found that repulsive.
I wish that there is no room There is no room for the hand wringing, and I will not participate in
Oh,
this
it's not
anymore.
hand wringing.
The hand wringing. No,
It's
no,
not
it
hand wringing.
absolutely
It's
is.
hand
No,
wringing.
it's just that
Jen just
you are
called you out on
positioning
it
yourself.
so well.
No, but
When you are
no,
in
but Destiny,
a
let me explain
world
to
where
you.
conservatives can say anything.
No, I'm not a
They can have
conservative.
any conspiracy
I'm not a
theories. They
conservative.
can have any plot. They can do anything.
But just to give some pushback, what Destiny is doing right now is arguably not right either, because you're making sweeping generalizations. I can get it. I understand where he's coming from, but even that is wrong as well.
And then liberals are
All right,
supposed to
Destiny,
sit here and be like,
Destiny,
"Oh my
no.
God, it's so tragic."
No, Destiny.
Absolutely not.
Let me explain.
Absolutely.
Let me explain my position, because I'm not a conservative. I'm not on either side in your race, right? Here's what I think about what you did. You'd like to fire off, as you've done so far in this debate, about your fury at how disgusting Republicans are, how inhumane they are, how they never have any empathy, blah, 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 blah. And then you yourself actually are exactly the person that you're describing. You are inhuman.
Why
You
is
are
she nodding her
somebody who seems
head?
almost gleeful that a young firefighter with a family, with a wife and children, who he was protecting as he was shot dead, that he deserved what was coming to him, because he went to a President Trump
Obviously
rally, a man who was
not.
president of the United States until recently for 4 years and maybe again. You sound almost gleeful, Destin, and I'm sorry. That makes you, frankly, despicable.
I don't think I'm gleeful about anything. I don't.
But just like, I could give two fucks, genuinely. But what does shaming somebody actually do? You know what I mean? It's stupid. It's like, there we go with this like TikTok 2-second clip on just getting your comeuppance. We're not addressing like the actual issue, which, you know, say what you will, it's definitely a conversation that's starting to be had.
I don't think anybody should die. I don't think anybody deserves to die. But you want to talk about gleeful? Look at the conservative response to Pelosi's husband when they broke in.
I can
there
answer
are
that.
mainstream media
I can
figures
answer
that were,
that.
I don't care.
I can answer that.
With all
I
due
think-
respect, I don't care what your
Let me
answer
answer
is.
that.
The reality is that conservatives have been turning the temperature up on the rhetoric. They have been making fun of these types of events for years, and now when something happens to them, now they're looking for sympathy from the liberal side. Absolutely not. It's insane. It's unhinged that you
but
can
here's the
conduct
problem.
yourself in such a manner
But
and
here's
expect
the
people to feel
problem.
sorry when things happen.
Why should anybody on the right listen to a word of your hectoring and lecturing about how they should behave? And by the way, for the record, the mockery of Nancy Pelosi's husband when he was attacked by an intruder with a hammer was also despicable, right? I can see despicable behavior on all sides, and I'm happy to call it out when I see it. You, however, want to present yourself as this great kind of standard bearer of decency, who sees outrageous behavior on the right time and again and is incensed by this disgusting, inhumane behavior. And yet, time and again, since the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, you have displayed...
Like, say what you will, it's kind of genius. I know, but it kind of is.
Exactly the
My dog
same
needs
kind
me.
of inhumane behavior. Fuck him about a fireman who is killed because he attends a rally of a guy he wants to vote for.
My issue with the MAGA kids is not that they are not empathetic. My issue is that they support a president that led an insurrection against the United States. I'm not here to tone police over their empathy.
80
I'm just saying
million
that if you're
people
gonna ask
voted for Donald
empathy,
Trump last time around.
That's great. 80 million people voted for a guy that tried to insurrect the government, and it looks like they might try to do it again. I mean, like, I don't know what you want me to say. These are the facts on the ground. The idea that
So you don't like attacks on democracy. So presumably you would unreservedly condemn the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, because that's one of the most egregious attacks on American democracy in modern times. Presumably,
I don't think that
you will
anybody
take
should
this
be trying
opportunity,
to-
given you
I
are
don't think
so
anybody-
determined to protect the integrity of democracy, you would find it absolutely outrageous that someone has tried to assassinate a president, right?
Oh my God.
If the other conservatives on this show want to say that it was absolutely outrageous that Donald Trump attempted to coup the government,
I'm asking you.
Then maybe I would. Yeah, no, I'm not going to get on my knees and beg for forgiveness or show sympathy to conservatives.
I'm not asking for that. I'm asking you to condemn what happened as an egregious attack on democracy. Can you do that?
No, I won't. No, I won't.
You can't do that. You see, so why the hell? Frankly, Destiny.
Absolutely not.
As somebody who knows what happens when this type of rhetoric, like firsthand, knows what it's like when this rhetoric gets in the wrong hands and the violence that comes from it firsthand. Nobody else sees it because it's not going to make the news because it's like a mental health thing, whatever. Watching this, trying to get somebody condemned for the dumbest shit right now, which I know it can be triggering. It's again not addressing the actual issue. It really isn't. And it's just like, oh, here we go. Let's shame them. Okay. Obviously, can we move on?
Why the hell should we listen to a word to say
Wait, hold on. Why do you think conservatives haven't been listening to a word that liberals have said about anything for 8 years?
Right,
What do you
but
think is
why
going to
should
change?
they?
You think
But
that if
here's my
liberals
point,
come out now
Destiny.
and they go, "Oh my God, this was so horrible,"
But here's
they're
my
going to go,
point.
"Wow, that is true." Maybe that
Wait a
Roberts
second.
should also like
Charlie,
turn the rhetoric down a
Charlie,
little
I'll bring you in at the end of this. I promise you, and you'll get a good chance to respond. But here's my problem, Destiny, with your whole position on this, right? Is that you don't actually have anything inside you that you want the other side to have. You don't have any of the empathy. You don't have any sympathy. You don't care that someone tried to assassinate
I'm not
Donald Trump.
asking for
You don't
empathy
care
and
that a young
sympathy. You don't-
fireman
you
with a
don't need
family
any of that.
was
I'm not
killed in the
asking for that.
process. You
Just
don't
don't
actually.
support an
You are not
insurrectionist.
the person you want these other people to be, and all you do is play whataboutery with every question I give you. And I'm just startled.
It's
that
not
some-
what about it. We're talking about Donald Trump. We're talking about the temperature of this country. But here's a question for the two panelists. What percentage of this event happening was due to Donald Trump's rhetoric? What do they think the answer to that question is?
What percentage? It was absolutely predictable. Coming from like a right-leaning position, it was absolutely predictable. And anybody that says anything other than that, I encourage you to sit back. Here's the thing is like you can, if you're ever unsure, trying to find information, is this true or not? If true, it's like strike one. Okay. I'm not saying that he had necessary intent to provoke violence. I think he just wasn't, to be honest with you. I know the people on the left might think I'm absolutely insane for that. But like even just watching this conversation, it's clear to me that even people that have seen many instances of this don't get it. And that's okay. It's just like, my point is, I don't think knew that. I think Trump was like, I think the election is stolen because how could I possibly lose? And then it snowballs from there. It's unfortunate. Keep check of your thoughts. If you find evidence for that, it's like if you found evidence for that, you could have gone to court, figured out it was stolen, and then get it put in your favor. That didn't happen. A little butthurt. It happens. Okay. You got a bunch of people telling you X, Y, and Z. They're on your side. Okay. That's another thing. Make sure you're getting nuanced feedback. Okay. It's obvious that snowballed. I think if he would have had experience and policy at all, then maybe he would have known that and that wouldn't have happened. Is it possible that he is this modern day Schmittler? Maybe. I don't know if we have the evidence for that yet. Kidding. Okay. I'm kidding. I'm just saying there's no evidence that would support it. Is the stuff that he did before evidence? Not really. Okay. I don't think, not yet. Not really, in my opinion. Like I said, I like him. That's one of the reasons you can't have all free speech. Anytime somebody talks about this, and I'm somebody that thinks you should be able to voice your opinion, everything, I pray to God, literally, not actually, kidding, but like I pray that people uphold this limited speech on some stuff. I know it seems lame and shit, but that, like, I see very easily how people's livelihoods come from just that little, no, we're not going to say that. Just like a little, some stuff is too far. It comes, like, safety is what comes from it. I suck at explaining it, but I did explain it in my Substack.
Percentage could it be that the other side, as we've just heard from Dave Rubin, has spent 8 years calling Donald Trump the new Adolf Hitler, a person who was responsible for the murder of 12 million people, including 6 million Jewish people in a Holocaust. Last time I checked, Donald Trump hasn't murdered 12 million people. So much as you would like him to be the new Hitler, he's
Perfect.
not.
Thank
But
you,
again,
Piers.
for an impressionable young deranged mind who has easy access to guns, that can be easily interpreted as an existential threat, said President Biden. somebody that needs to be put in the bullseye. Said,
if you guys are like, I don't know about this speech thing, I'll leave you with this because I have to go take my dog out. But if you're wondering, can speech really go that far? I want you to look at all of the political driven violence that has happened, whether it's somebody shooting up XYZ, religious institutions, whatever. I want you to see if there was a manifesto. And if there was, what it said in there. Because people don't do that. And I think it would actually be really helpful. There is evidence that hateful speech does lead to violence. It might not seem like it. Maybe you don't hear about it. But go back, and I encourage you to do your own research because it does have an effect. It affects a lot of different groups, and it's unfortunate. So, like the video, comment, subscribe. I'm going to go let my dogs out. I will put the link to the rest of this video in the chat if you guys want to go over there.